Well, I'd love to hear some of the stuff that you've been working on. You've developed the Soultime app. You are working on Naborly as well. Tell us a little bit about that. And I'd love to then pan back a little bit and ask a little bit more philosophically around digital and what you've been learning as well. But tell us practically a little bit first.
Okay, so about 4 years ago, I started a Christian meditation app called Soultime, which was a complete shock. I mean, I'd never done anything like this before in my life. I, lived in the finance world mainly, so I had absolutely no idea about anything to do with apps or anyway. So that was an interesting learning experience, and I think sort of where we've ended up is that we have a very, very well loved app. We get incredible reviews from it actually every day about changed lives and people saying how much it's impacted them and how it's completely transformed their Christian life. I'd say, which is incredibly sort of pleasing and heartening, gratifying. The kind of more complicated part is that actually I kind of went into this assuming that apps, if they were good, would kind of distribute themselves, but that just is not the case. It's an unbelievably crowded market, and just the app market in general. And a number of things have made distribution of it more difficult. Facebook sort of won't allow you to target ads at Christians at all now, or any kind of Christian, somebody with a Christian following or anything. So that's made it very difficult for all Christian apps, funnily enough. And about 18 months ago, I started thinking about whether one could do a Christian social network, really with the idea of helping people sort of build community online. And then the question is, why do you want to do that when you've got WhatsApp and Facebook and blah, TikTok and on and on? And I suppose the answer to that is something like, for the first couple of hundred years, Christians met in public places and private homes. And eventually they went, actually, do you know what? This doesn't quite work for us. We need our own spaces. So they started building churches, which has been where we've met ever since. And I suppose where I'm at is thinking, well, all of these spaces, they do some good things, apart from anything else, somebody else pays for them. But there's a lot of things which they don't do very well. They're not particularly safe. The incentives are very weird. It's more like standing in a shopping mall than it is in a church. Would it be possible to do a social space, community space? I think a community network is a better word than a social network, that really works for churches and the Christian community in general. So that's kind of, and we're in the middle of, so we built a thing called Chatpray, which kind of half works. We learned a lot from that. And we're now rebranding it as Naborly, spelled NABOR.LY. So if you want to sign up for it, you can go on the website and do that. It's NABOR.LY, just to repeat. And that's coming out in a few days' time. And we're going to have a good go at it. But it's a very unknown territory. We don't really know what people want, what's going to work. We know a bit about some things that kind of half work, some things that don't work. So we're kind of investigating our way into that space.
Mark, it is really impressive what you have been accomplishing, and it really is remarkable. And I've been on Chatpray and have been enjoying using that, but really excited about the Naborly about to launch as well. And
I think it's going to be a sort of big improvement. We slightly ran out of money with Chatpray, to be honest, and so I've managed to raise some more money. I've got some one particular fantastic investor who's really behind the whole thing and has he's done a lot of sort of very, very, very successful businesses which have had a Christian foundation. So he's very committed to the whole thing. So
there's loads in here. I love the white paper that you published as well on I think on Chatpray.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
and There's some really interesting thinking going on behind this. You've put a lot into this, and you mentioned about the exponential age that we're living in. I just wonder what does that mean, and what does that mean for the church even?
Okay. So I'll try and do this sort of briefly. So we've all discovered through COVID that exponentials are incredibly powerful things. If you double something 10 times, then it's 1,000 times what it was before. And obviously, if you double another 10 times, it's 1,000,000 times bigger than it was before. Why is that important? The reason is this, that the curiosity of the internet is that distribution is essentially free. I mean, it's so low cost as to be, which is why we can do this. And there are nearly 5 billion people connected to the internet. So of a world population of whatever it is, 7.5 billion. So, that's increasing. So we'll be at 95% of the world connected to the internet fairly shortly. But that means that you can reach all of them at zero cost. So what that does is it then changes. So we're used to a world where, if you want to build a new church, it costs you, well, in the States, I can give you the number, it costs you $3,500 per person to build a church building. So, you can do the maths, and it's probably a lot more in the UK. So it's very kind of expensive. If you wanted to build a church for 10,000 people, that's 35 million. Well, I can build you, a bunch of apps for that money. But the thing about an app is it's now available to absolutely everybody, everywhere. So, but the tricky part is getting people to come to your app. But if you can, things can move incredibly fast. So, TikTok didn't exist 3-4 years ago, now has whatever, a couple of billion users. The latest sort of phenomenon, and Be Real, it's currently putting on 10 million users a month. So if you get this right, you can grow incredibly fast and do extraordinary things. But the difference between, so church finances are all sort of everything, all the money's local and all the building is local, and so you expand it very fast because you have to build another one somewhere else and another one somewhere else. The internet's completely the reverse of that. You spend a lot of money centrally and then you distribute for free. So that's the basis of Zoom that we're talking over. It's the basis of Amazon Web Services. That's the basis of Google and Netflix and so on and so on. You have to spend a lot of money in the center, but then it's free from there on. So, but what that means is you can grow something enormous, but you have to spend heavily to do it to start with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's just fabulous, Mark. It really is just to hear and spend this bit of time with you. And you mentioned something there, which I think also is mentioned elsewhere in that paper. But in a world with so much noise, we're all trying to battle obtaining attention, aren't we? And so
attention becomes the scarce resource. Yeah.
Is that a battle the church should be fighting?
On the last and greatest day of the feast, Jesus lifted up his voice. Yes, it is, because if he didn't lift up his voice, no one would have heard him, because it was the last and greatest day of the feast. It was a noisy time. You have to, there are ways and ways, but if it's noisy, you have to make enough noise for people to hear you, because there's a responsibility to make some noise, if you see what I mean. Because if what good is the I can't even remember the verse, the trumpet call, if it's weak and feeble. Yes, it is important to make some noise. Of course, there are, what we've discovered from social networks, so there are legitimate and illegitimate ways to do that. And that goes back to all the Paul stuff. That we haven't done anything underhanded or tricky or whatever, and we know that social networks use all kinds of tricky stuff. So the challenge is for us is, how do we make enough noise, but we do it kindly and with good intentions and so forth. And that's a kind of intriguing balance at the moment. The hard part is to get people to come. That's the if we can't do that, we can't make the whole thing work. So we have to make a bit of noise.
I think that's absolutely right, and it's I completely agree, and it's a bit of both, isn't it? We've got to put ourselves out there, we've got to do some work, but ultimately we need to rely on the Holy Spirit, Spirit going before us and preparing the way, and it's just so brilliant just to see the work that you're doing, Mark. I absolutely am enamored by all that you're achieving with Soultime app, now Naborly, but also Chat Pray before that. It really is exciting to see what you're accomplishing. Looking forward in the next few years, what are your hopes for Naborly? What will it look like?
Well, okay, so there's a sort of metric that we've all become familiar with with COVID, which is the R number. What's the reproduction number? And we talk about things going viral, and it actually means something in the sense that if R is greater than 1, things expand without having to pay for marketing. They expand exponentially. I mean, it may be a slow exponential, fast exponential, depending on where R is. If R is less than 1, then they shrink. And it's an extraordinary difference, as we saw with COVID. You get these sudden whoosh spike, and then it kind of comes off again. So our battle is to see if we can get R over 1, because if we can, we're in business, and we can actually then figure out. The trouble is, if your R is not over 1, it's very expensive to acquire customers. I mean, for Soultime, it probably costs $25 or $30 to acquire a paying customer if I do it through advertising on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. You couldn't possibly. I mean, YouVersion has 500 million users. Well, registered people on it. Let's put it that way. If each one costs $30, that's that's $15 billion. It's not feasible. You have to get the R over 1. So that's my kind of number one target. I mean, it sounds very kind of unspiritual, but it's the that without which we don't have a future from an app point of view. If we can do that, then every kind of community service for Christians becomes easy, because people are there. The big cost the big difficulty is getting people there.
Mark, there's so much I want to ask you about and find out more about it. It is really, really brilliant. If people want to follow up with you,
so they should go to the Naborly website, nabor.ly, and just sign up. We're looking for ambassadors at the moment, which is people to kind of work with us to take the app forward. If you want to sign up as an ambassador, I've got a great new partner, a chap called Matt Robotham, who is working, doing lots of stuff with all the people coming in, and they're going to help shape the app and figure out what works in churches, what works for communities, and so on. So if you go there and sign up, then when it comes out, you'll be first to know, and we'll keep in touch with you, and kind of hopefully you can help us make this thing into something useful.
Mark Wagner, thank you very, very much for spending some time with us today. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Naborly grows over the next or coming months, and I'm looking forward to it with much anticipation. God bless you, Mark, and thanks again for your time.
Cool. Nice to see you. Take care.